Thank you so much for being here today, Janna. I am so excited for everyone for this session today. So meet Janna Baim. Did I say that correctly, Janna?
Yes, that's right.
Oh my gosh, tell me how to say, I asked you before this,
That's
how to
it.
say your
Janna
name.
Bain.
Janna Baim. I know this is always the hard part when you're like a career coach. It's like, am I saying their name right? Did I remember what their job was? Like all the things come together. But your story stuck with me. A couple of months ago, I was on a career series with a wonderful coach named Kate Adamitz. Jenkins, I think, is her last married name, correct? I know
Yes.
her sister Anne, and through that, you were featured on there and you talked about resiliency, and it was incredible. And it got me thinking that this isn't just about resiliency. Your story really tells how to do a legit career pivot, the down and dirty, how important networking is, and that it's not freaking easy. Like you had to make some major sacrifices. There were some things involved. And so I asked, like, would you be willing to come on and just talk? Because I think a lot of my clients and a lot of us are really kind of in it, and when we're facing some major changes, it can be hard. Like, will this be economically devastating? Like, how will I do this? Will I find something? And just all of those things. And like, with that, life. Like, every single one of my clients either has kid or aging parent or like spouse demands. Like, really, nobody in my like female client base is not touched by something other than like themselves. Like they all have something else going on. So it's just like life gets in the way. It makes pivoting hard. So welcome. Thank you for being
Thank
willing to
you.
share. And can you tell us a little bit about how you made a career pivot and like how hard it was, but that you got through it?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'll be happy to share my story. It starts many years ago. I was a high school history teacher, and that is kind of the end for me. I became a history teacher, and that is all I wanted was to be a teacher. And then that's where the first of many pivots of my life began. I stepped away from teaching just to focus on my family. I thought I would definitely be coming back into teaching. Um, and I stepped away and focused on my family. And during that time, I really missed talking to people because I'd always been working with students and student facing. So I took a job in the evenings when my husband would get home in retail. And that led me to take on a management role that kind of happened on accident. I worked in retail for a couple years and worked my way into the retail management space, which wasn't ever really on my radar. But here I was sitting in this space. My kids had gotten a little older. They were in school now. And I realized I wanted to it wasn't working for me necessarily. Nights and weekends can get really hard. And that was when my kids were home now and as they were in school, and I knew I needed to make a change. So I wanted to get back into a student facing career, but I wasn't certain that high school teaching was right for me anymore. I'd always loved the advising aspect of helping students with career goals and focusing on their educational goals. So I figured I would look into advising. And that is when I decided, I think I'll try to get a job at UW as an advisor. So I applied for some jobs and wasn't getting even a call back at that time. And I started talking to people at this boutique I worked at. So I would ask, what they were up to, what they did for a living, and kind of started networking there, thinking this is Madison. It is actually a pretty small town. You can kind of see what people do, what people love about their job, what they don't love. And I started talking to many people. And there were some people that worked at UW, actually quite a few. And I started talking to one woman who was an advisor, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to be an advisor. I've been applying for everything at UW. And she told me some news didn't really want to hear. And that was the news of that Madison's super competitive, extremely educated area. And unfortunately, without a master's degree, they're just, it's very, very hard to get any role at UW. And at that time, I didn't have a master's degree. I just had my bachelor's in education. And I had 4 kids at home. So to think about getting my master's kind of felt out of reach. But then I started thinking about it more as those weekend shifts came and I'm missing my family about, what would that look like if I went back to school? And was she right? So that is when I kind of started reaching out to people at UW. You can find anybody's name that's an advisor online. And I started emailing, looking on LinkedIn, and connecting with people that worked at UW, asking if they would want to meet for coffee, that I'm a teacher that is interested to get back into the field of student-facing work. And I met with a couple that spoke with me, and I asked them what they loved about their job, and I really felt like this was something I wanted to do. But trying to get that master's was going to be hard, and I didn't really know how to do that. And again, networking at my boutique, I met a woman, and we were talking about careers, and I had said I wanted to get my master's, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it work. And she had told me about a position that was available at a private school in Madison, a private high school, and it's a Catholic institution. And she also said, if you ever want to get your master's, if you went to a private college, that institution will, the college will give you a great percentage off because you're working at a Catholic institution. So I decided to apply for that job, and it was an hourly position. So I would have gone from now my salaried assistant position to an hourly position to a humongous pay cut. But my days were going to be a lot different. I was going to work Monday through Friday. I would be able to be home by 3 o'clock every day. And the opportunity to get my master's was there. So I applied for that job and I actually got it. And I started working in that role. I continued to have my eye on the prize of wanting to get my master's. And I did. It took a year of working there before I could even apply to get my master's and get that discount. So I did. I went back to school. I did a 2-year degree, and that was really something I knew that I had to do to move on to a role that I wanted to be in, and that was in higher education. Now that came with a lot of sacrifice. Took a huge pay cut first, and now I still had to come up with some money to pay for this school. So we just made some minor changes in our family. We switched cars. We didn't need SUVs. We got different vehicles. We got rid of some, at that time, it was like cable. Now it would probably be close to like your Netflix, Amazon, which one's more important? Your Prime accounts. And so we just made a couple changes, and then we just pared down our life a little so I could get my master's. And that also took some system changes at our house. So Sundays were for me. With 4 kids, it was really hard, but my husband had to manage all the children without me. I needed those days to work on schoolwork. And Wednesday evenings were also, I didn't come home until all of my kids were in bed. So that was a little different. I went right from work to the library, and I didn't come home because I knew if I came home, I would find something else that was more important, or I would do something else instead of my work. So that is what I did. I got my master's, and I then applied to UW-Madison again. And I applied 5 times, and I didn't get one interview. And I applied to Edgewood College, and I got the job there, and that was really exciting for me. So I took on a new role. So that pivot, there was a lot of pivots there. So I was pivoting from, that whole series of working student facing, then being in the administratives or working in a retail space, and then working at this lower level position for this Catholic school. It was in the library is what the role was. So it was hourly, non-salaried. But I had to make a lot of financial changes for our family. And during that time, I continued to network because I still wanted to make sure that this is exactly what I wanted to do. And I wanted to maintain those relationships that I had reached out at the beginning 2 years previously at UW. So I would meet for coffee. We were all downtown anyway. And so I'd meet for coffee and make sure that, yes, this is still what I want to do. And when I applied for positions, I thought, oh, I know this one person or three people at UW, but it's such a huge institution. I really didn't realize that it's very hard to get in, even if you know people. But I felt like talking to them helped build my confidence because they told me their story and it wasn't easy either. There's a lot of applying that goes in the works, a lot of networking. Um, so I took this role at Edgewood and I was there. Um, while I was there, I continued to apply to UW and I ended up applying to 16 jobs at UW before I got hired. So the road was very long, but also a very short period of time from the time I started getting my master's to the time I got a job at UW was about 3.5, 4 years, three and
Okay.
a half-ish.
Yeah. And in the scheme of things, that doesn't seem long now. And even me hearing it, it doesn't. But I think sometimes to clients about to embark on that, it feels like forever. But like, was it forever and was it worth it?
Yeah, I think I said this during my talk with Kate too, is that I had spoken to a woman that was going to school to get her administrative license, and I was kind of telling her when I was looking at the brochure of this college of like this master's degree and like the heaviness, I'm like, I just don't know if I can do it. It looks so hard and it feels so long. And she just told me, a year from today, you wish you would have started today. And I always remember that because a year just goes so fast. And these years of constantly like feeling that you're not in the right role or looking for something different, you can make some changes and within a year be out, or you can just sit in the space of, I can't make any changes. Something's just going to have to fall in my lap. And that is very rare. I wish I was one of those people, but unfortunately that doesn't happen to me.
How many people did you network with, or how many told you you needed a master's? Because I think sometimes what I like about your story is that you figured out a way to do the higher ed economically. I've got some clients and I have friends too. And I mean, I did it myself, honestly. I was like, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm going to go get a master's in this field I really know nothing about. And now it helps me. It was HR.
Yeah.
But like, Google is not the place to figure it out. A school's marketing website is not the place to figure it out. So like, how many folks kind of told you you needed a master's or like this would help you get your like foot in the door? Because I think people need to hear it from like, you can't just trust one source, right? Like
Yeah.
curious, like what made you trust your gut? Like this is what it will take.
Yeah, I mean, I continued to talk about it and with all those people, I reached out to about 5 or 6 people from UW and stayed in contact still to this day with 2 strongly, but the I continued to network with those 5-ish people and they all said the same thing that you really need to get a master's degree. There are people that don't, that kind of start out young. They start right out of their undergrad and they're like they went to school at UW, then they took on a role at UW and they've been able to climb their way. But that is, if you didn't start there right after college, it is really hard to get in without a degree. And it's just
And
because
then,
medicine is oh, I'm sorry, it's so
yeah.
competitive.
It is. And how did you find the initial people? Like you mentioned, you worked at the boutique. Sometimes that's something that my clients will say, like, how do you find these people? And I'm like, just go on LinkedIn, like randomly, like try it. But like,
Yeah.
I've realized some folks aren't as like willing to put themselves out there as others, but I think it pays off when you do. But so
Yeah.
how did you find them? And did you have any like uncomfortable conversations? Because I always try and warn them, they won't all go great, and that's okay. Like, were any of them like less friendly than others, or
Oh, for
what was the
sure.
process like? Like, let's normalize how freaking uncomfortable networking can be, please.
Yes. I think for me, I mean, honestly, you can ask anyone who knows me. I love talking to people. It's my favorite thing. So it is super easy for me to talk to people. But some people that are shopping, especially like at the end of the day, they don't want to talk to me. And that's when the uncomfortable conversations started where I'm like, well, what do you do for a living? What kind of clothes do you need? And they were there to just like decompress probably from their awful day, and they didn't want to tell me anything, and they just wanted me to shut up so they could shop. Um, but there were people that were super friendly and were willing to, and I was saying, I would share like I want to get back into student facing. I can't go back to high school level work. I really am looking to get into higher education. Do you have any tips for me? And some had none. And some would say, yes, you probably need to get your master's, or let's meet for coffee and talk. And that's kind of where those conversations came from. And then I did reach out to people via LinkedIn, and, those conversations didn't go like super in depth, but it definitely helped saying, yes, I have a master's. The majority of the people in my advising committee have their department have their masters as well. Here's some things I love about my job and not. I think it's really important to also ask people what they like about their job, because
Yeah.
I, especially in UW, the roles can be different in advising. So I really wanted to be student facing at the time. And so I wanted to make sure, when you look at their website, there's a lot of jobs that are all kind of the same, but different classifications and labeled differently. And I wanted to make sure I encoded those correctly. So I kept in contact with those people saying, is this job more student facing or is this more administrative?
And how did you make time for all of this? I mean, you did a good job of explaining like on how Sunday and Wednesdays you had to really
Mm.
put that time aside, but even just like the change of going to the hourly position and some of the changes around the family, like any tips for people on keeping their sanity and like seeing the bigger picture, because it is a time investment.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of resilience, is knowing that they're at that, like just looking at your mindset and trying to pivot even during challenging times and saying that this isn't forever, it's just for now. And that really got me through, especially, all of this didn't happen without tears. There were tears. And
Yeah.
that's important because it was not all rainbows and sunshine for sure. But just knowing that this is going to be the best for my family and my mental health at the end of the day, and going day by day, but knowing there's a bigger picture at the end of it, right?
Yeah. And then the lateral position, like how you started at Edgewood before you got the UW one, did anyone give you tips like, oh, if you got some experience somewhere else, it might be easier to get into UW? Or was that just this is the closest thing to my field, doing what I want to do, just not where? Talk about kind of that, like being willing to do that, because sometimes folks wait too long to do that. And it's like they'll wait 2 years to keep applying for the dream. But in the meantime, they could have had a lateral move closer to,
Yes.
and I can't, it seems, I don't know, sometimes it's a pride thing. Sometimes it's just like
Mhm.
a being scared they'll get stuck. But talk to me a little bit about that. Cause I want to see more people do that because it's cheaper than going back to school. In your case, you had to, but in
Yeah.
many people's cases, they could just do that and like
Yeah.
make steps.
I looked at everything after like while I was getting my master's, everything was strategic. Every job I had to be strategic. And also as an advisor now, I tell my students that. So I went to Edgewood knowing that it would help me get experience. It's doing what I wanted to do, but just not at the institution. And at the end of the day, it actually was such a gift because it was a smaller institution. So I could see the process and the organization of the institution in such a smaller spectrum that when I went to UW, I really knew how things worked because I'd been at a smaller institution and I could kind of see the organizational charts at a much smaller scale. Um, but yeah, they paid way less than UW. The vacation package was embarrassingly tiny, but I knew that it was something I needed to do at the time because I had devoted to this I needed to get out of this hourly position, first of all. And it was still on the road to what I wanted to do. So it might not have been the exact position, but it was going to get me to where I needed to go. And I still talk to my students. Currently, the students I work with they have I work with med students now, but I worked with computer science students for many years at UW. And I found myself telling them these stories too, because they also wanted the big magic shiny ball, which was Google or Amazon, for their hiring positions right out of their master's degree. And we'd talk about how there's still a lot of great positions. It's still very strategic for your career, but you can take on a smaller role and work your way into those bigger roles.
How long would you say after starting in the advisor role at Edgewood that you began applying to UW again? Because that too, I think people can do that sooner than they think because it can be such a slow process, but then they feel guilty, or it's also really overwhelming starting a new job and even
Yeah.
thinking about interviewing. But like,
Yes.
we also kind of normalize that it's necessary. Curious there, like how quick,
Yeah.
like, did you start applying right away? Did you wait 6 months? Like,
I waited about 4 months actually. Yeah, I waited about 4 months and it was exhausting because writing a cover, I applied to 16 jobs between those 4 months. I was only at Edgewood for 1 year. So in those 8 months, I had applied to 16 jobs and I was doing a new job that I didn't know as well. But I just felt it was really important. And crafting all those cover letters was a lot of work. But I just spent I had just come off of my master's of having those Sundays free. So I would just spend, it would only take me like an hour or two of searching and working on my computer on a Sunday to kind of sift through the job applications and apply for those.
yeah.
But I started pretty early, I think. Um, and I do feel like it is hard to apply for jobs when you're in the middle of a new job, especially because you just feel vulnerable and maybe not your best self because you're really, your brain just is exhausted from learning new things and then trying to be your best self in an interview or a cover letter. It seems hard.
And I think sometimes people feel guilty. I know having done it myself and sometimes with my clients, but I try to remind them like as long as you're doing your best at work, giving your proper notice, etc., like that company or organization could cut you at a moment's notice. Like you have to go after your goals. And like in the scheme of things, is anyone questioning your 1 year stint there now? Like how long have you been at UW? Because in the time I'll hear that, well,
Yes.
I got to stick it out 2 or 3 years or this and that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
let the labor market tell you what you need to stick it out. Like let the like hiring managers tell you what you need. So kind of curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if it would affect me negatively or not because I had actually not even been there an entire year. I'd been there like 11 months is what it shows up, I
Yeah.
think, on my LinkedIn. So, um, now looking back, I don't look at it negatively at all. I've been at UW almost 5 years.
Yeah.
So it just went really fast. And you're right, jobs, I could have lost that position at any time because it is a private institution and they were making cuts as well. So no one looked at me negatively, I don't think, at that role when I left.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in the scheme of things, that's a lot of times how lateral moves go. What tips would you have for others that are either thinking about making a major pivot or potentially even starting their own business or a side hustle while they are working? Because a lot of the same things come into play, the networking, the time management, and the integration of life into that. Like any tips on like keeping them sane during that process in terms of the resiliency piece, because I think that was something that you just spoke so beautifully on the last time I heard this, that I'm just like, oh, we all need this message.
Oh, thanks. I don't know if I can deliver it the same, but
That's okay.
um, I had a good group of humans in my life too. I think people that are supportive of you and believe in you is so important. I had my husband, of course, and the women in my life, my best friends, my cousins. We are very close, and I shared with them how vulnerable I was about this and moving into going into graduate school and just keeping those people close and kind of letting the people that have the noise or maybe make you feel that you're doing the wrong decision, just letting them go. Maybe not forever,
Yeah.
but just for then, because I think that it only pollutes the waters and it doesn't help you in the long run for people that don't believe in you. I mean, I have to say, even my mom at times was skeptical of me going back to graduate school. Like, would it pay off? Just go back to teaching. That's what you know what to do. What she didn't want to see me struggle, probably is the biggest part. And it was a struggle at times. It was not easy. So that is one of the suggestions, is to just surround yourself with people that believe in you. And even if that's going, making time to go to some networking events with a girlfriend, because no one empowers you more than a bunch of women that are like grabbing coffee on a Tuesday night who all want to make a change in their life. It's so important. And I still do that. I go to those meetings. Um, Even though I'm not really making any change. A lot of them are people that want to do small businesses, and I still go because it's just such a great feeling to know that you're feeling supported in making changes and being vulnerable.
I like that. That's something I've done through a freelancer group here. We're all like part-time, mainly part-time, like 30 hours a week or less of moms that just aren't really in like traditional corporate roles. And we're kind of doing our own thing. And it's been huge to not have the constant guilt of do more, do more. Like I'm surrounded by people who are like
Mm.
our families first. And this is like kind of how we fit it. And we have those conversations. Did you ever have mom guilt? I feel like that's something
Oh,
men never get asked, and we all get asked, but I also feel like it's hard not to have it. So curious if you have
oh,
any tips there.
yes, horrible mom guilt. It was awful. Um, I would have like little fingers under the door on Sundays of like, and I could hear the like crying, and yes, 100% mom guilt. But um, my kids were also so supportive. Thank goodness. I mean, they were a little older, except for our youngest was pretty young. But yes, the mom guilt is real. And but you're also doing it for your family, right? And I also looked at this like, I'm gonna still try to be a great mom and a good employee and an okay student. That is something I told myself a lot, that I don't need to be a great student. I need to get my master's. And so I'm going to do the work, clearly, but it doesn't have to be the best, because I still want to be a great mom and I still want to give all at my job. And this school, obviously, I want to get what I paid for, but I didn't have to be the best student. And I just tried to remind myself that, because also when you go to graduate school, there's all these like Blackboard, and you have to respond to everybody's papers and this back and forth, and you're trying to think of the right thing to say, and you don't want to be judged. And at the end of the day, none of that matters. You just have to
Yeah.
show up and make sure you process the big ideas.
I love that you shared that because I think a lot of us go into it with perfectionistic tendencies, and the reality is something will have to give. Like
Yes.
you will need to have your values and priorities really clear,
Mhm.
and you have to be okay with the things that do give. And we
Mhm.
also have to be like cognizant of like who we are and what we are willing to give or not give. Because I know that is huge. And I think sometimes people go in kind of blindly and naively. And if we maybe set ourselves up for some of that from the front end, I don't know if it
Mhm.
would make it easier, but at least it wouldn't be such a surprise.
Yeah.
No, if
I
you're
kind of had
you're
this
not.
ritual when every time I'd start a new class. I didn't realize it till my husband was like, "You cry always on the first day of school when you get home." Like, because I always felt like I can't do this. This is way too big. Like, because you would get your full syllabus at the beginning of each semester for the courses I was in, and I'd have like a cry, a hyperventilation, and then remind myself, I don't have to be the best at this. This seems like a lot, but I'm just going to take this one day at a time, and it does not have to be my best work. Of course, I need to get my money's worth and gain knowledge, but it doesn't have to be my best work.
So true. I love that. I'm so thankful you shared this story. As you continue to navigate your career, what sort of other networking moves do you make? Like, I know you mentioned you really have a good core group right now, but as you add in new networking connections, what does that look like for you? And what are like just a couple of the questions you might ask them? I think we'll kind of end there because I'm hoping that this will inspire some people that you can take some risk, you can do it, but you are going to probably have to get out of your comfort zone and go talk to some people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll also share that right now I've been in my role for a long time and my goals have changed. What's important to me has changed. You know, my family's now changed. I have kids in college and I also have parents that are elderly. So now everything's kind of shifting a little again. So I'm also always looking for maybe something different that aligns more with my values that have changed over time. So I always try to network, and that is, for example, I was at a dinner party around Christmas time. I talked to everyone, asked them what they did, told them what I did, connected with them on LinkedIn when I got home, sent them an email saying it was great to meet them. Just those follow-up connections is really important, and then kind of seeing who they're connected with. So I do that when we're invited to things like that. I continue to go to those women um, in business coffee times, even though I don't own a business or aspire to own a business. That's a great way to network. Everybody knows people in Madison, so it's a great way to connect. And then also through like how we met is just like saying yes to things that feel like oh, that's not for me. I don't think I could do that. But just saying what is there to lose? Really, I can do this. So saying yes to things that kind of feel uncomfortable, I think are important. Um, getting off the couch and going to things is also important. It's hard at the end of the day. You just want to come home into our sanctuaries. And if you just say yes to one thing a week or every other week, I think you'll connect with more people than you think.
yeah, Carl, that's true. That's how I met you. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen Anne for years, and it took me 2 years before I asked her to do one of these YouTubes. And then she introduced me to her sister, and then I got on that series. And like, I did not meet you overnight. Like, Anne has been in my life for 7 years. Like, I always joke at networking is like golf, like it's a very slow game. But when you hit, like, when you get it in the hole and you start to like form those
Yeah.
things, like big things really do happen.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing this today, Jana.
Oh,
I
thanks.
think it's really helpful for folks. And I think it's kind of good for them to hear that you did all of this work and it didn't end there. Cause I'm the same way. Like I'm pretty honest with people. Like my business has continued to kind of shift and pivot and like it will continue to. Like this is not the end all be all for me or like the perfect thing. Cause I think life changes and we continue to kind of evolve. So it's good to know that like that probably won't be the end. And it's great if it is, like if people kind of do the work and they're in the perfect thing. But I think it's kind of
Mhm.
good to know that like these skills will make you successful in everything, in whichever direction you go. So it really is helpful. So anything else you'd like to
Thanks.
share other than just thank you so much?
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think you're super valuable too, because we all get kind of pigeonholed into what we think we can do. And you're such a great light to let us know that there's other things for the characteristics and organizational things we do. So I think you are a great role model and super helpful to people that are looking to make a change because it's really hard to open our eyes up and see the huge opportunities there are. So I think you're doing a great job as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is I get the same kind of guidance from my coaches. So I so get it. And I also get from being younger on and like not having any money to do anything, that everything you do can be a hard choice. But there's a lot of really good free resources out in the community. And these networking groups are usually free or a cup of coffee is pretty low cost. Toastmasters is always another good one I like to really tell people to try because sometimes I think folks hear that and they're like, oh, I don't have time or I don't have money. And I'm like, I'm not here to plug me. I'm just here to share resources and share stories so that you can understand it's possible and others just like you have done it. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for that
yeah,
though. I appreciate it.
agree. I even think doing things you love can help network. Like I went to an art show the other day, and I'm to see my friend's art. And I met, 5 new people that live in Madison and talked to them about what they do. And we all had something in common and we were there to see art. So I never would have met them if I didn't go to that 8 p.m. art show on the East Side, which felt really out of my comfort zone
Yes.
because it was late at night on the other side of town.
Isn't it true? It's not always fancy. It's not always comfortable. And sometimes, probably more than not, it's the last thing you want to do.
Yep.
Same. Some of my best networking was when I had to drag myself there, but I
Mhm.
did it. And I was like, oh, thank God I did. Because I got
Yes.
like this really great referral source. Or pickleball has been kind of a fun one too, that I think people kind of discount. It's a great way to get to meet people. So yeah, that's such a good point. So, oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and keep us
You're
posted
welcome.
on your journey, and let me know if I can introduce you to anyone, or if anyone on
Thank
this
you.
call would like to be introduced to Janna or someone in her network. Just let us know. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.